I like watching all kinds of animated cartoons. And because, specifically, I grew up watching anime, I have no problem with it. So today I'm going to be giving you my top 10 Japanese animated series. Hi, my name is Luis Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist on the Simpsons television show. I've worked on the show for 20 years. I grew up watching Japanese cartoons. I'm El Salvadorian. I grew up in El Salvador. They showed Japanese cartoons on TV all the time. I was exposed to Miyazaki very early on when I was 3, because I watched a show called Heidi that he happened to do layouts on, and his good friend Takahata was the one that directed. But I also liked Battle of the Planets, and I also liked watching Messenger Z, and those were my cartoons growing up. And then I watched all American cartoons once we moved here when I was 6. But I was always very partial to Japanese cartoons. I mean, I like them. They're very influential in my life. I have no prejudice against them. There are a lot of people that have prejudice against them because there is some really, really raunchy, bad stuff in them a lot of the time. And I totally understand because, yeah. But for me, there's some incredible animated shows that are just absolutely worth watching. So here's my list. My number 10 is Robotech. Robotech. Okay, this was my cartoon growing up. My parents didn't allow me to watch more than an hour of television every day, 30 minutes of which were dedicated to watching Robotech. Robotech was my soap opera. This cartoon was not the watered down cartoons of the 80s like He-Man and Thundercats and G.I. Joe and Transformers. This was not watered down. In this cartoon, people died. This was serious. This was serious drama. Bad stuff happened. There was a war going on. People actually died. It was crazy. My mom, it's funny, my mom didn't let me watch G.I. Joe. Why? Because it was too violent. Really? She hadn't been watching this sucker because people actually died in this, while in G.I. Joe, the bullets never hit anybody, right? The only reason it's in my number 10 is because it hasn't aged well. It hasn't aged well at all. It's not a very good looking cartoon once you get halfway through the season. I mean, it's just, they really started cranking these suckers out, and you can see the quality just gets worse and worse and worse. But it is absolutely worth watching all the way through, in spite of the fact that the artwork starts suffering pretty badly by the end. My number 9 is something that I didn't become aware of until about a couple of years into Simpsons, and that is Future Boy Conan. This is a TV show written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. It's a TV show, so it's a series. I don't know, 20 episodes long. Future Boy Conan is very reminiscent of Island in the Sky. It's kind of almost got the same characters. Conan is very much like Pazu, and Lana, I think her name is very much like Shita in Island in the Sky. But Conan, he's a really tough, very strong kid, and he's got like the most amazing set of toes. Yeah, toes. He's got like, his toes are his superpower. But he's like a super kid. It's insane. And it's basically about this boy who just lived on this island with his grandfather, and then this nation was chasing this little girl, and then he has to go save her. It's incredible. If you could find a copy of Future Boy Conan, I highly recommend it. This is like a Chinese copy of the TV show, subtitled in English. It's hard to find. It's hard to find. I'm sorry that this is my number 9. The story in it is incredible. Miyazaki, of course, Miyazaki storytelling is dead on, incredible. This is a great, great series. Future Boy Conan. My number 8 is silly wackiness, crazy, super low budget Slayers, the TV show. Slayers is about Lena Inverse, who's a sorceress. She tends to destroy everything that she touches, and she saves people, but only by basically destroying their town. It is silly, crazy madness. It is really low budget. The characters hardly move. things slide in and out, and that's why it's funny. Part of the charm of this cartoon is that it's so poorly animated, and yet the stories and the characters are so funny, they crack me up. And it's a fantasy world, and it's kind of like, you know, Lord of the Rings, but complete silly, wacky, making fun of fantasy tropes. It's great. It's great. Slayers, the television show. The television show, not the movies. The movies aren't as fun, and they're really like high quality, more high quality than the TV show. So I highly recommend the TV show, not necessarily the movies. My number 7 is Bakuman. I don't own Bakuman. The only way I've seen Bakuman is online, on these, you know, fan sub versions of TV shows. I actually reviewed the Bakuman manga a few blog articles ago, which I will link to on my blog if you're on my blog. But Bakuman is basically about two boys who want to become manga artists, and it's their adventures, and then you get to learn all about the manga creating industry, and it's awesome. Highly recommend it, and if you want to know more about that, then you can go to my article that I wrote. Now, number 6 is Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail is relatively new. It's on Netflix streaming, so you could watch it there. But it's very, very, very much like the Slayers, only better animation for Japanese television anyway. And it's very, very silly, and again, it's fantasy universe. The characters are completely whacked out, deranged weirdos, which is exactly why it's fun. You know, the characters blow up every town they try to save, and that sort of thing. So it's a very formulaic, as far as Japanese standard comedy goes, but I liked it because it's right up my alley in that kind of crazy, weird humor thing. I like the Japanese animation humor. This reminded me of Slayers, and it does other things that Slayers doesn't do, and it's really a lot of fun. So I highly recommend my number 6, Fairy Tail. My number 5 I also don't own. It's also on Netflix streaming. It's Fullmetal Alchemist. Fullmetal Alchemist, high-octane adventure about a boy who screwed up his alchemical thing, trying to bring his mom back to life. Ended up ruining his brother's life by trapping him in a suit of armor because his body got destroyed. He also lost his arm, so he has this metal arm. And their quest for this Philosopher's Stone so that the boy can give his younger brother's body back. It's exciting. It's very cool. It's a fantasy world, and it's very dramatic, and it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend watching this show. It is Fullmetal Alchemist. My number 4 is Naruto. Yes, it's Naruto. Why? Because it's great fighting. It's the same kind of show as things like Dragon Ball Z. It follows the same kind of tradition as that, and One Piece and that sort of thing. Only the reason why Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, and all this other stuff is not even in my list is because I just don't like them. I just don't like them. I understand, but they didn't do anything for me. Naruto, for some reason, did, and it's very formulaic. It's a very Shonen Jump formula. You've got the spunky protagonist who's, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be the best, and then you've got all the rivals who also want to be the best, and then everybody ends up fighting, but then they become friends because they fought, and the whole it's same kind of, you know, it's that sort of Shonen Jump formula of battle manga genre. But I liked Naruto a lot. You know what it is? It's because everybody's got some kind of like variable powers. They all got their little specialty, and it's always fun when each one of those guys has a specialty like that. And there's something about that is kind of reminiscent of a superhero for me. So maybe it's just like that whole Justice League superhero, everybody's got a superpower kind of thing that I kind of liked about it. And the characters are a lot of fun too, and the fighting and the drama, it's great. So my number 4 is Naruto. My number 3, Mobile Suit Gundam. Mobile Suit Gundam. Okay, so this, I'm going to make a disclaimer, there's a ton of Gundam, all right? I'm talking about the original 1979 Gundam. I'm not talking about Gundam Wings. I'm not talking about Gundam 00. You know, I'm not talking about Gundam Stardust Memories or whatever. And by the way, I've seen all that stuff. No, I'm talking about Gundam. The original 1979. So this show was exactly the same type of show that Robotech wanted to be. It was highly influential. You can totally tell where Robotech was just lifting stuff in here verbatim. Unlike Robotech, the quality of the work stays consistent throughout the entire series. On top of that, the stories get better. So at first, the stories are like kind of kiddie-ish, it seems, and then little by little, the series gets deeper and more complicated. Unfortunately, it does have Amuro, who's a very, very whiny protagonist. But I guess, I mean, for a teenager in the middle of a war, you could kind of excuse the fact that he's kind of stuck in this position of being this warrior when he was never supposed to be. It's got by far one of the most awesome endings to a series ever. I mean, it is super great the way the series ends. Mobile Suit Gundam is my number 3. My number 2 I don't own a copy of. Here's the thing. My number 2 is Macross Frontier. Macross Frontier is a sequel to Robotech. Okay, so here's the problem. What we know as Robotech in the United States, in Japan was called Macross. And Robotech was basically, they took like 3 different Japanese cartoons and then they made it into Robotech as if they all were part of one giant cartoon, but that's not really what it was. Macross spun off and did it into its own series, and they did a lot of different things. They had Macross Plus, and then they had Macross 7, and they had Macross 2, and there was a lot of different Macross. I think I've seen pretty much all of them. Not all of them were all that very good. Some of them were beautiful, but the stories kind of stunk. Stuff like that. So, and Macross Frontier is incredible. It takes what was awesome, what was great about Macross, and updates it. It basically takes the formula of the first show and kind of redoes it with different characters, but because it takes the formula, it veers from the formula too. So it veers from it at just the right times, so that if you're a fan of the original series, it throws you off. Because you expect things to go one way and they go the other direction, and it really does throw you off. And the story is great, and the mecha is great. And unfortunately, there was one thing that I didn't like about Macross Frontier, is that it's not hand-drawn mecha. The Veritech fighters or the Valkyries, they're not hand-drawn, they're CG. You get more dynamism out of them, but there's something about hand-drawn giant robots that is awesome by the very fact that they're hand-drawn and they still look good. There's something about that art form that the Japanese animation studios have really nailed that I love. And I'm a little upset that the Macross Frontier isn't hand-drawn mecha, but that doesn't destroy the show. The show is, the story in it is fantastic, very dramatic, highly recommend it. Macross Frontier, my number 2. My number 1 is Vision of Escaflowne. This is, believe it or not, a mecha show. Even though it looks like a girl romance cartoon, it is not a girl romance cartoon. It's got this gigantic monstrosity of a mecha in it. It's a girl she's a runner, and then for some bizarre reason she gets thrown into this magical fantasy world where she has to help 2 guys, but both the guys, they have this armor, and the armor is actually these gigantic robots. It's dramatic, it's great. I love the world, I love the mecha. The bad guy in it is like ridiculously awesome because you love to hate him. The artwork, I love Escaflowne, the main robot in it. Imagine Norse mythology and that sort of thing, but kind of married to this fantasy mecha driving world, and you kind of get Vision of Escaflowne. It's got fantastic music. I believe I even bought the soundtrack because I liked it so much. My all-time favorite animated Japanese series is Escaflowne, and I haven't seen it anywhere. Run by Bandai. I guess it was to sell toys, and they must not have sold a whole lot of toys. They did a movie, Vision of Escaflowne movie, which was nowhere near as good as the series. I love this series. I highly recommend it. If you really, really like mecha like I do, give it a Vision of Escaflowne a try. So that's my top 10. There's a lot. There's a lot of anime. I've been watching anime forever. I mean, I had 10 years of binging on anime. I've seen a lot, so I would like to say that I know what I'm talking about. I haven't seen every single thing. It's impossible. So if I missed something that you think was great, let me know. Based on my obvious tastes, if you've seen what I've recommended, let me know what you guys think. If you've seen Vision of Escaflowne, let me know, because it's a little bit obscure, I think. This video is meant to be viewed on my blog. I'm going to try to link to videos and things like that on my site if possible. Go to my site. The link, if you're on YouTube, is right below in the description, and you can see what I'm talking about. And if you're at my blog, you can subscribe to my newsletter, and then if you do, you'll get a free PDF book. If you don't want the free PDF book, then you can just purchase the book on Amazon. It's called Angel Cowgirl. But if you do want a free PDF version of that book, so go ahead and subscribe, and I'll send it to you right away. And that's it from me. I'll see you next time. All right, bye.